I was a top performer at a major Canadian bank, yet management called me the problem and suggested I get counseling for their bullying. "You've made me feel pain," my boss cried, flipping the narrative, curious how this toxic culture broke me down. TLDR, I was a top performer at my job, yet they still manipulated and broke me down. This is everything they do not want you to see. If you are curious or have ever experienced something similar, here it is. Title: Gaslighting, Retaliation, and a Culture of Fear. Stay away. Review. Your experience at this bank may differ by branch, but beneath it all lies the same foundation: a toxic culture built on manipulation, fear, and favoritism. You do not grow here, you merely survive. Barely. For context, I consistently ranked among the top performers throughout my region, even placing in the top 10 in the province. I am not sharing this to brag, but to provide perspective, because despite those results, I was never officially acknowledged. This was not due to a lack of performance, but rather because I was not aligned with the right political factions. Everything in this review describes what occurs when that is the case. Toxic coaching and manipulative management. Management does not coach, they control. Internal competition is encouraged in the most toxic manner, by publicly comparing employees, shaming lower performers, and using others' successes to humiliate rather than uplift. I have witnessed management directly tell one of my coworkers they were not as good as I was, leveraging my name and performance to shame them for faults that were not even theirs. It was humiliating for them and deeply uncomfortable for me. I did not ask to be weaponized like that, but they did it anyway. Coaching is lazy and merely performative. My manager frequently asked me to explain what I did well solely because they were not initially paying attention. And once I responded, I would be inundated with nitpicky, fabricated criticisms that had nothing to do with my actual performance. It is gaslighting disguised as development. And if you dare to speak up or provide suggestions for improving your performance, anticipate mockery, sarcasm, and outright dismissal. "Oh my God, this again?" Or "Are you serious?" were typical reactions. The moment you stop nodding and begin thinking for yourself, you are seen as a problem. I once voiced concerns about unfair treatment, and my manager told me to my face that while they would still endorse me for a promotion, they would make it a point to speak negatively of me to others, quietly undermining my chances. They never stated I would not advance within the company, but it was clear that was their implication. This is how subtle retaliation operates here, technically compliant yet strategically sabotaging. Internal mobility depends entirely on your manager's word, and they know exactly how to weaponize it. Moral disengagement, emotional manipulation, and dehumanization. If you raise a concern or ask for basic empathy, they will not respond with understanding. They will treat you like a burden. Management instantly flips the narrative. "Have you considered how you have made me feel?" I'm not exaggerating. My boss genuinely cried in front of me, claiming I caused her pain simply because I expressed how hurt and unsupported I felt. Real tears. As if I were harming her by requesting to be treated with respect. It was not just deflection, it was emotional manipulation in its rawest form. And the most unfortunate part, it worked. I left that encounter questioning myself rather than her, feeling like I was the problem for speaking up at all. Appreciation is virtually non-existent unless it is vague and aimed at the group as a whole. If you seek direct acknowledgement for your hard work, forget it. And if you dare to ask for it, you will be told, "I already have," even if you provide proof that they have not. I once told my boss I needed more appreciation, and they outright lied, asserting they had been providing it all along. When I presented examples showing they had not, they replied, "You can believe what you want to believe. I know what I did." What? And what is worse, when I experienced burnout after giving everything, I had to sit there and watch my boss give my praise to someone else. Word for word, everything I had ever wished to hear was handed to another colleague right in front of me. Not because they did not care, but because it was easier to humiliate me through silence. If you push back even slightly, they become condescending, patronizing you as if you are too naive or emotional to comprehend how things work. There is a deep culture of moral disengagement here. Your humanity is inconvenient, and requesting dignity makes you the problem. At one point, when I mentioned that I was facing severe bullying, my boss told me I was the one alienating everyone and that I was the issue. They even suggested I seek counseling, as if my response to being mistreated was the real problem. The irony: I was already in counseling because of what this workplace was doing to me. When you are bullied, you are on your own. If you happen to work with a bully who publicly humiliates you, even in front of your manager, you are still on your own. I personally experienced this. I was openly mistreated in front of everyone, including management. When I brought it up, I was dismissed. They said things like, "I have bigger things to deal with. Talk to them yourself. Have you even tried speaking to them? Maybe you are overthinking it. Are you sure this is not something you are misinterpreting?" Or maybe you are the problems. They do not investigate, they do not mediate, they deflect and circle around your pain until you begin to question your own reality. You start to wonder, what if I am the one in the wrong, even after being blatantly mistreated? That is not just poor management, that is psychological abuse. Mistakes are punished no matter the context. It does not matter how small or infrequent the mistake is. It does not matter if you take full accountability or explain how you will prevent it from happening again. Even if no real harm was done, management will escalate it to human resources. And the consequences are severe. You will face an unpaid suspension, lose half your bonus, and become ineligible for any formal recognition, including being named a top performer all over something minor. When you highlight how destructive and unnecessary this is for morale, they do not care. Their response, "It is just part of my job." And when they escalate it, they gain complete control of the narrative. They will blow the situation out of proportion and you will have no say in it. You are not permitted to correct it. You are not allowed to provide context. Human resources only sees what management tells them, and that version becomes the official record, regardless of how misleading or exaggerated it may be. They understand it undermines performance and trust, but they will do it anyway, because it is easier than leading with empathy or common sense. Favoritism runs the show. If you are a bully but flatter the boss, you are untouchable. I worked with someone who treated everyone, including me, poorly. No one liked her. Everyone recognized her behavior, however, because she constantly praised management, she was protected. While the rest of us were written up for the slightest infractions, she skated by completely unscathed. This is not an isolated incident, it is how the system operates. The worse you treat people, the better you will perform as long as you keep the boss satisfied. And yes, there is a fast track to advancing in this bank. You can ascend quickly if you play your cards right. This means either being extremely strategic and politically astute or being the most shameless sycophant. Performance alone will not suffice. Integrity will not suffice. Promotions are linked less to merit and more to obedience and ego stroking. Raises exist, but they are an insult. Yes, you can receive a raise, but only after going far beyond your actual role, taking on responsibilities that are not yours and begging for it. You will be expected to pick up the slack, not because your colleagues are lazy, but because management does not trust them. Since you are the best, you receive the burden of doing everyone else's job. And when that raise finally arrives, it is disappointing. The amount never reflects what you have sacrificed physically, mentally, and emotionally to obtain it. You will walk away feeling used, not valued. No support, no trust, no safety net. Training is virtually non-existent. You are expected to figure things out on your own, and asking questions can be turned against you later. Some colleagues will even weaponize their assistance, offering it only to later hold it over your head. Trust is scarce, backstabbing is common. Individuals report one another just to gain favor with management. It is a survival game where everyone is out for themselves. You may encounter a few decent teammates who do not engage in those games, but even that is a gamble, and with constant turnover, those individuals do not remain for long. The only good aspect, benefits, and perhaps the people. This bank offers good benefits. That is about it. If you are fortunate, you might meet a few genuinely kind, trustworthy colleagues who help make the day more bearable. However, they are rare and often driven out or burned out swiftly. Just when you begin to build some trust, they leave and the cycle starts anew. And sometimes even those strong connections do not endure, not because of anything you or they did, but because management will actively interfere. If they observe you getting too close to someone, they will plant seeds of distrust between you. I once had a coworker I considered a best friend at work, and inexplicably, for reasons I still do not fully understand, management decided to pit us against one another. Just like that, another source of support vanished. And if you are clever or shameless, yes, you can ascend rapidly. Yet make no mistake, the game is political. Success here is not merely about doing good work, because yes, your performance does matter, but it only takes you so far. What truly determines your path is who you impress, how much you conform, and how far you are willing to go to engage in the game. The reality of workplace dynamics. To survive here, you practically have to become a yes man. You will encounter people so emotionally distant that it seems as if they have shut off their humanity. You will meet bullies who behave so poorly that you question how they are even employable. And you will encounter coworkers who act friendly until you become targeted by the boss, speak out, or become a victim of bullying or gossip. Then they turn their backs, they go silent, you become invisible. Yet a rare few stand out, the kind souls who show you genuine empathy amidst the chaos. The ones who treat you like a person when the system refuses to. You will remember them long after you leave, and that speaks volumes. Final words. If you want to be manipulated for trying to grow, punished for not being perfect, shamed for being human, and forced to watch bullies get promoted while you are written up over the most trivial matters, this place is for you. Otherwise leave. TLDR, I worked for a major Canadian bank where I was one of the top performers in the province and still faced manipulation, emotional breakdown, and subtle sabotage from management. Bullies were protected, I was blamed for my own mistreatment, and I was even advised to seek counseling when I was already in it because of the job. I completely burned out and ultimately had enough. This is the story I could no longer keep to myself. Thank you for allowing me to share this. Frankly, even if no one sees this, I feel a little lighter. Story 2. I wrote my absentee father a brutal graduation letter. I hope your prison days haunt you. The call I got, him screaming, "Why did you write this?" Turns out he thought he could just re-enter my life after abandoning us for years. Will he show up anyway? So for some background, I, 18 female, sent out letters and graduation invitations to a few members of my family and some friends about a week or two ago. Essentially, I expressed how much I love them and how delightful it would be if they all attended my graduation typical stuff, right? My mother suggested that I write a letter to my father, who is entirely absent from my life. To provide some context, my father, male, 50 years old, went to prison in 2011 when I was around 3 years old. He was incarcerated for assaulting my mother, assaulting a neighbor, endangering a peace officer, and 2 felony counts of child endangerment. Ultimately, however, the attempted murder charge was dropped because endangering a peace officer carried a longer sentence, I suppose. I am certain there were other charges like assault, but I cannot recall every single detail off the top of my head. It is safe to say he is not a good person, to put it mildly. He was released from prison in 2016, and my mother established a protective order, so we did not hear from him for a considerable amount of time. In 2018 or possibly 2019, he resumed contact with my mother, and my brother and I saw him a few times. As a child, I was extremely anxious about going anywhere without my mother, and honestly, I still am. Therefore, as soon as my mother stopped attending the visits, I did as well, which seemed to anger my father, whom we will call Steve, a fictitious name, of course. He only saw my brother about 3 more times after I stopped going before he completely vanished from our lives. The last time I saw him was during Christmas in 2019. I have heard the story of the day he lost his temper, but I won't delve into too much detail since I am concerned that some internet-savvy individuals might be able to track me down. To keep it brief, he became enraged at my mother because my older sister, 17 female at the time, called to ask for her cell phone charger, which she had forgotten before heading to work. Clearly, alcohol was involved, as it is absurd to become furious over a phone charger. He also had prior issues with my sister, like her smoking marijuana, but still, come on. At that time, Steve was drinking with a neighbor friend we will call Mike. In his anger, Steve began to push and hit my mother, prompting Mike to intervene and ultimately getting hurt in the process. Subsequently, my mother and Mike went outside and Mike called the police. My mother then went to my sister's workplace to advise her not to come home after work and to stay with a friend. When my mother got home, the police were pulling into our neighborhood right behind her, so she went inside the house to protect me, 3 years old, and my brother, 1 year old. At that point, Steve fired at the police officers, striking multiple vehicles, shattering our front door, and even hitting the house across the street, leaving bullet holes in their front door as well. Eventually, a different neighbor was able to talk him down and he was taken into custody. At some point, he admitted to planning to kill my mother, Mike, and himself that night, which is why he had 3 preloaded firearms prepared. Anyway, now you understand why I have such animosity toward this man. Returning to the main issue, I sent my father a letter. It was not kind in any sense, but I do not believe kindness was warranted. Here are some key points I remember from the letter. I am not ashamed that he is my father. I have openly discussed his actions and their impact on my family with every friend I have had since elementary school. I have gone into excruciating detail and even pulled up his mugshot to laugh at with close friends. Growing up, I never knew what it was like to have a dad, so I never felt left out. I did not really envy other kids because I had my mother, and I recognized that she was doing everything she could for me, my brother, herself, and my sister. I told him that I loved my mother, and I was grateful she never allowed him to affect her. I do not want his money. My mother suggested I ask him for money to buy a car, as I currently do not have one. She thought it could serve as compensation for all the birthdays and Christmases he has missed over the years. I mentioned this in the letter but added a line that resonated with me. I noted that missed holidays imply you tried, Steve, and you did not. Those were forgotten birthdays and Christmases because you were absent, you never even attempted to be there. I expressed my hatred for him multiple times throughout the letter. If he were to show up at my graduation, despite it being uninvited, I indicated that there would not be enough seats because the 8 available are reserved for my real family, who love and care for me. He would have to sit in a different room provided by the venue to watch it on a live stream alongside other families who faced the same seating shortage. I expressed confusion over how he got remarried, questioning how a woman could love him enough to want to spend her life with him, knowing his history and what he did. I wrote that even though I do not want a father and do not need one, my brother craved one desperately. I labeled him an awful person for depriving my brother of that. To conclude my letter, I expressed that I hope his days in prison were hell and that they haunt him every day. I also hope he realizes that when he lies on his deathbed, he will know that not even his children whom he allegedly tried so hard for will love or care about him. I signed it with my name, which I won't reveal, but I have been using my middle name as my last name for about a year now. I used to dislike it because Steve and I share the same middle name, only mine is spelled differently to appear more feminine. So I signed it with my name, let's say Lexi Ray, not my real name obviously, and beneath it I wrote, Ray is my name, not yours. This may seem somewhat cringeworthy now that I think about it, but in the moment it felt incredibly empowering. Now regarding what happened today. I usually do not wake up until around 10:00 a.m. because I graduated from high school early back in January and have been leisurely waiting for college to begin in the fall. However, I woke up earlier than usual due to construction noise, so I closed my window and went to say hello to my mother who was screaming on the phone. I stood there like a little kid in the entrance of our kitchen, observing her as she yelled into the phone. She turned around and asked, "Oh, do you want to talk to your dad?" This man called my mother at approximately 6:00 a.m. demanding to speak with me. Naturally, she refused because it was early, and she did not want to subject me to an angry phone call from a man I had not spoken to in 6 years. Eventually, the phone was placed on speaker and he yelled, "Why did you write the letter?" I was annoyed from the outset. I do not usually appreciate being yelled at, especially by someone unknown to me, so it truly upset me. The only way I have learned to handle such situations without shouting back is to respond in the most disinterested manner possible. So I replied, because I was sending out graduation invitations. Apparently, he did not appreciate that as he kept repeating my statement over and over again, prompting me to give varied responses each time. Because I wanted to. I do not know, man. Finally, my mother whispered in my ear to tell him it was how I felt. Perhaps she was growing weary of his relentless repetition, or maybe she knew it would quiet him down. He eventually accepted my explanation, or so it seemed. He started going on about how it hurt my feelings and that I had not slept because of it, but honestly, my friend who lives in town has not received her letter that I sent on the same day I sent his, and he lives out of state, so I doubt it has genuinely troubled him. He probably received it yesterday or something and is simply being dramatic. Then his tone shifted and he asked if I had a car in the most condescending manner possible. I answered truthfully, saying no, I do not. He replied, "Oh, that sucks," and I responded, like what? Do you want me to beg you on my hands and knees for a car? Buddy, you live in a pre-built house on your father's land. He is practically residing in his father's backyard, and yet he is attempting to make me feel guilty for not having a vehicle. Sorry to all the kind people who live in pre-built homes on their father's land. I did not mean to mock you, just him. He wanted to speak to my mother again, so I stepped away, but he remained on speaker. The moment I walked away, he inquired if he could take me off his insurance now that I am an adult. What the hell, bro? He was also astonished to learn that my mother has insurance and that I did not even need to be on his policy. His follow-up question, could he also take my nearly 16-year-old brother off as well? Boy, just admit you despise us and are financially struggling. I am unbothered. Steve also mentioned he would attend my graduation, even though I explicitly stated in my letter that it was not an invitation. Clearly, someone did not read the letter. My mother told him directly that he was not permitted to attend because he would ruin it. He claimed he would send me money, stating, "Make sure it actually goes to her," insinuating that my mother might steal it. Brother, your child support is allocated into two separate accounts, one for me and one for my brother. My hardworking mother is not stealing your sporadic child support payments, which you send every other month or only when you feel like it. Jesus. He attempted to argue that the reason he has not seen us is due to a restraining order, which we did not even have. We had a protective order that expired when I was 11 years old, and even then, I am pretty sure that since my mother allowed us to see him, the order did not matter. After he hung up, my mother went through all the court documents and prison records she had kept just in case. This meant I got to read every responding officer's incident report from that night. I was able to read witness accounts and letters he wrote to my mother, all of which contained a repetitive message. I love you, I miss you, I hope you and the kids forgive me. I miss my wife, my love, my best friend. Please do not divorce me. I love you and I know you love me and will forgive me. We can recover from this. I also read letters he wrote to me from prison, but I did not read the ones he sent to my brother because that is not my concern. I fear of what they may contain. My father was convinced for the longest time, and likely still is, that my mother cheated on him with Mike and that my brother is Mike's child. However, my brother and I have always looked identical, and Steve used to mention how much I resembled him. So if I look like you and my brother looks like me, how could he be another man's child? He claimed he would call back later, so I guess we will await that. I just really needed to vent since my only friend is at school right now and I cannot communicate with her until she gets out. I have felt nauseous all morning from reading the incident reports and everything else. I genuinely feel like I am going to vomit. Please do not attempt to discover who Steve truly is or who I really am. I just needed to write this down and release it from my system. I am also not particularly skilled at writing about such topics, so I apologize for the poor quality of my writing. Story 3. My boyfriend said adults get busy, but 3 months later I panicked over missing his train, fearing I hurt him. I kept saying I don't want to be friends, but the truth, I just needed clarity. Now I wonder if I was too much or not enough. Can I ever break the cycle? I do not have a gauge. When I try to use my own judgment, I discover later how deeply incorrect or nonsensical my reasoning was. It creates an immense amount of pressure, but I understand the importance of not playing the victim. I think about this issue constantly and seek the perspectives of other people frequently. I began dating this guy with whom I had been on and off for about 2 years. He never got to know me very closely, or perhaps he did, I genuinely cannot tell. One day he offered me advice that saved my life. I thought he would never speak to me again, but I recognized it was enough that he helped me without any obligation to do so. This is not because I took advantage of him. I felt guilty for approaching him, but I also knew he was safe to ask. I appreciated that he directly expressed his desire to spend quality time with me rather than just being available when I was sad. Looking back, I realize I kind of left him alone after that. He would often say he understood that adults get busy and that he was not always available, yet now I wonder if the fact that I did not see him until 3 months later hurt him. My friends tell me to stop giving disclaimers because they believe it shows a lack of confidence, but I do not care. The stakes are low and this is a Reddit post. I often wonder about how this affects others, but there are people who do not want to hear about the negative ways someone could project or perceive their actions. We started dating after we used to hook up, but also spent time together very closely as friends. I honestly avoided him at times because I was afraid he thought I was only interested in him for sex, while at other times, I feared he found our conversations annoying and preferred sexual encounters instead. I knew that sex was the issue. He understood that I felt this way, but when I tried to discuss how he felt about being physical or not, I think he told me it would not bother him when, in fact, it did. I really do not know. Anyway, he told me he would see me a certain number of times, but he could not. I wanted him to communicate this directly. I am not sure why. He always encouraged me to express what I wanted or needed. However, that can be overwhelming, and it certainly was, regardless of whether you are direct or not. I do not understand that balance. It scared me that he did not simply tell me. I missed his train and had to convince myself not to spiral, but I felt awful. I could imagine he was really angry, yet I also did not want to drive myself crazy being fearful. I am sure he was perfectly healthy and unaffected. Sometimes things would bother me and I would not actually care. For example, I get anxious when people make grand gestures on holidays or birthdays. I feel apprehensive, but I do not want to assume that people are doing something negative. Anyway, it just seemed like there was a level of distance, but he would always tell me to be all in if I wanted to because I had communicated that I was trying to keep things casual. I thought I was being too intense, only to be told not to be so nonchalant. I did not realize I appeared nonchalant. I do not really know how to avoid that. I know I engaged in behaviors that he did not, which made me anxious, but I interpreted it as differences in communication style, and honestly, I appreciated those differences about him. I was a frequent texter while I don't think he was. Sometimes he would do things for me, like once he stayed on the phone with me all day because he likely knew it would make me happy probably, or perhaps it made him happy that day. I was clearly anxious in our relationship. He said he consistently tried to create a safe environment. I expressed my appreciation for that, acknowledging it was a heavy burden, particularly during our breakup surprise. I did appreciate it, but at times I felt so confused. Occasionally I felt dismissed, and I would feel terrible for calling him at moments when I forgot he was busy, although I did not apologize every time. Perhaps I should have been more considerate. He told me he was doing all of the emotional heavy lifting. I would get so excited whenever he would talk to me about his life because I felt he did not share much with me. I was also worried because he seemed so unhappy while we were dating, and I did nothing to address it. Even if we could not communicate effectively about it, I should have ended the relationship rather than making him miserable. He said he believed it was beneficial for us, although that was after I mentioned regretting agreeing to date him. I acknowledge that this is pure chaos, but I am sincere. I do not believe either of us intended to hurt one another. I reacted like a lunatic when we broke up, expressing that I did not want to be friends because the entire experience had been so confusing for me. I was telling him I didn't want him to have to do things he disliked, and he reassured me during that conversation as well. It was a complete turnaround from our conversation the day before when he first texted me to break up. I panicked, but we went to bed on good terms. The following day, I was convinced something more was at play, and I felt almost angry at him for telling me to choose when he said it was distressing for him to communicate with me. I felt as though I would be cruel if I opted to remain friends despite that. However, I feel somewhat guilty because I apologized numerous times, and the items I left for him were many things I had given him before we broke up, items I told him I would get him, and his belongings from a date we shared. We were supposed to meet up at 1:00 a.m. one night, which is not entirely unreasonable, but I was so tired due to lack of sleep that I worried I would not be awake. Therefore, after work, I took medication to nap and ended up waking long after he had left. People tell me to stop being so hard on myself, but I wish I had grabbed his bag and driven to his house that night. I do not understand why I seem to be too much for people, but I accept it. I offer assistance and people often seem upset by my offers. However, if I did not want to help, I would not. Even when I do not want to, people sometimes just need things. The point of all this is that I have experienced numerous relationships and friendships where I simply freak out. Do I become obsessive? Am I misunderstood? Am I immature or inadequate in advocating for myself? Do I make my problems too obvious? When I first started dating him, I attempted to conceal my sadness, but he spoke to me, stating that everyone he knew was sad and that it was okay. I do not know what differentiates me exactly, but I understand. I am also at peace with the fact that it did not work out and know that I will figure things out. But good grief. I need to apologize to him, whether that means never speaking to him again, offering a specific apology, or simply letting him know that I care enough to avoid putting him through anything similar in the future. I initially met him and was apprehensive about getting too close because I was terrified of ruining our connection. He was clearly too good for me. However, I wonder if I am permitted to feel upset. Can I express frustration regarding things I feel I tried to clarify? I do not even need to feel angry. We just frequently missed each other, which was disappointing and saddening. I communicated to him that I did not understand why he was so upset about breaking up with me, since it seemed as though he had wanted to end things for a long time. I only mentioned that I could not be friends because I would become too paranoid to ask him questions, as I would with my other friends, to ensure I understood the details of our relationship accurately. I also know that he must have had some reservations about me or thought I had red flags because one day I was making a self-care post about myself and joked, "I think I need a manual," to which he replied, "I believe I can just be kind and figure it out." Part of me thinks he dislikes it when someone tells him things before he comes to them himself, but another part of me feels like this was true for reasons I will not outline at the moment. I did not try to blame him or portray myself as a victim in our messages, but I do not know. If this post is all projection, I apologize, but seriously, how can I avoid being like this? How can someone not have their reservations about others? And how can it be least offensive to express those reservations? His primary complaint about me was that I did not disclose my concerns, yet it always felt like there was something else he did not appreciate about me. I believe I cannot be his friend for my own sake as well. It is unhealthy for me to feel like a person feels judged by me or for me to have these anxious thoughts because of someone, yet it is not just him, it is every person all the time. I sent a meeting invitation and typed it properly, but in my mind I overthought it and became anxious. No one even noticed it, it took about a minute. However, no one comprehends my level of distress, not even my therapist at times. I am literally so confused, and I feel terrible for choosing to set strong boundaries with him, even though he constantly encouraged me to express what I sought in our relationship and with others. I genuinely feel bad that he even had to give me this advice. I think what is perplexing is that I would call him, attempt to open up, and I definitely made mistakes. I tend to talk excessively when I am anxious, and I discussed being depressed too much while simultaneously being evasive. I would not realize that when I shared a story about something I found annoying or humorous, he would tell me I seemed normal for how I reacted because he did not grasp what I was conveying in the story. I would respond, "Yes, I feel normal about it," and sometimes it would hurt his feelings. I could choose not to discuss the things that worry me, yet then I would be pushing people away, suppressing myself, or masking my feelings. I would be excluding myself from the emotional intimacy I long for. I cannot cope with all these rules and intricacies. Story 4. My boyfriend, who on paper seemed perfect, broke up with me over kids. "It's illogical to bet our relationship on a possibility," he said. I offered to try for his dream, but he insisted, "I won't let you sacrifice your happiness." Now I'm left questioning it all. Was this truly the right choice? I am a 29-year-old female and my boyfriend is a 38-year-old male. We have been dating for about a year now. From our very first conversation, it was evident that he wanted children while I did not. It was truly unfortunate because we connected instantly and everything seemed perfect between us. Our connection felt like night and day compared to my other dates, and he expressed a similar feeling. During a serious discussion about this topic a few days into our relationship, we nearly decided to end things before we became too attached in order to minimize potential hurt, since we held opposing views on having children. However, neither of us wanted to let go of the other. We agreed to postpone the discussion and deal with it whenever the time came. Fast forward a year, we have experienced both wonderful and challenging moments, but overall, it has been a pleasant, happy, and healthy relationship, very different for me personally. Naturally, I am quite thrilled to have finally found someone who is not indecisive and who genuinely puts in effort. However, no couple is without issues, so I decided to address some concerns I had regarding our interactions. This was pretty standard, but I often felt that we struggled with communication. I felt unable to express my thoughts without him becoming defensive or leaving my place. Nonetheless, we were working on it, so I approached this discussion with cautious optimism. I raised my concern, but we made little headway, after which he asked, "Do you even want kids?" I was utterly taken aback by his question. Here I was, attempting to express my concerns to improve our relationship, and suddenly my world felt completely destabilized. I tried to formulate a response, but to be honest, that entire conversation is quite hazy to me now. I recall that he mentioned he was waiting to see if I would change my mind about having children. It is important to highlight that I was never completely opposed to the idea. I just had numerous concerns about it. When I was younger, I often dreamed of being a stay-at-home mother while still having the skills to return to work whenever I wanted. I wanted my children to excel in everything and lead a much better life than I had, filled with opportunities I never encountered. However, as I grew older, I became more aware of how costly everything is, the lack of sleep, the physical toll on the body, and that reality frightened me. I kept thinking that if I can barely take care of myself, both in terms of effort and finances, how could I possibly care for a child who relies solely on another person for survival? I am sure my partner would be an incredible father, but the thought of just the two of us already feels overwhelming. We both come from modest backgrounds, but his family appeared to be more functional than mine. There seemed to be a lot of love and happiness there, which I genuinely admire for him. On the contrary, my family is incredibly strained, filled with animosity, financial instability, toxicity, and various forms of backstabbing that, while not necessarily malicious, are still deeply harmful. It was so bad that I literally moved across the country with a random boy I met just to escape it all. My family experiences are vastly different from his. I witnessed how my parents struggled, and I did not want that for my own life. In fact, my sister, who is 40 years old, recently had a baby and has been struggling. While she earns a decent salary, she is the sole breadwinner and her husband is essentially a deadbeat, meaning she handles everything alone. Thankfully, she is near some family friends who have assisted her at times, but she is truly struggling. This has been my observation. Everyone I know with children seems to be facing significant difficulties, and I do not want that for myself. I told my partner that if he wanted children, we needed to be adequately prepared. I might come across as high maintenance, but I desire to have a nanny to assist with parental responsibilities. I do not have family or anyone to rely on here. They say it takes a village to raise a child, but it is just my partner and me, and he works far too much. So it essentially falls on me. Returning to the discussion about children, I reiterated my points, but I also mentioned that I was not opposed to the idea of having kids. I simply wanted to ensure that we had the resources to care for them. I do not want to have children and do a subpar job of raising them. I want to ensure they attend good schools, can see a doctor whenever necessary, can engage in sports and hobbies, and can truly make the most of their lives. All of that requires financial resources. Then I began to think about college for my children. I was fortunate that my parents were so poor that I did not have to take out many student loans and was able to pay them off a few years after graduating. My partner attended graduate school, so he was less fortunate. His student loans and the thought of my children having to face the same situation give me a headache. He has stated that he does not want to pay for their college, they need to work for it. However, we earn too much for them to qualify for financial aid, which means it is our responsibility to support them. I do not want my children to graduate from college, struggle to find a job, be burdened with student loan payments, and miss out on their best years for building wealth and benefiting from compound interest. I want to ensure they are set up for success. My parents could not assist me in any area, and I refuse to endure struggles in my life only to see my children experience the same hardships. I believe these concerns are all rational. Yet his response is that he knows people who earn significantly less than we do who are managing well with 2 children. However, I do not just want to manage, I want the best for my family. The conversation concluded with a breakup. He believed we held two fundamentally different views on having children. He desires them with an unwavering passion, would do anything for them, and thinks that raising them would be profoundly fulfilling, which I find somewhat endearing and can agree with to an extent. However, his perception of me is that I would detest the children and resent either him or them for disrupting my life. He believes I would dislike the process of caring for children, changing diapers, losing sleep, etc., and that I would not be happy. To some extent, I think there might be truth to that. However, at 29, I feel I have many more years to enjoy life before settling down to start a family. I want to travel to many places and experience new things. Once I have finished that, I would settle down, raise my children, and share with them all the amazing experiences I had in the world. My partner's concern is that I might never want to settle down. While that is a valid question for which I do not have a clear answer, I trusted that we would find a way to make both of us happy when the time arrived. We love each other very much. I thought this was just another challenge we could overcome together. Yet he was adamant that breaking up would be the best decision due to our differing views on children. He claimed it was illogical to base our relationship on the chance that I might change my opinion about having children. I was surprised by his assertion because isn't the foundation of a relationship built on emotions and feelings? I love this man and he loves me. Surely everything else would work itself out, right? Or perhaps I am simply being naive. I mentioned that there is a possibility I could change my mind, at which point he would have everything he desired, a partner and a family. Isn't that worth taking a risk rather than having 100% certainty of not having it if we separate? He responded that the chance of me changing my mind was practically non-existent, which led him to the conclusion that breaking up made more sense. A few days passed, and I found myself nearly pleading with him to give our relationship a chance, insisting that everything would work out. At one point, I even completely caved and told him I would give him the children he wanted. However, he remained unconvinced, and the conversation shifted from having children to my sacrificing my own desires for his sake. He does not want me to abandon my child-free aspirations merely to satisfy his wish for a family. He understands that this is not what I want and that I would not be happy. I wanted to shake him. I am happy with him. I could be happy living in a shoe or if it were covered in goo. I would find joy no matter the circumstances because he is by my side. Perhaps that sounds immature, but I believe it wholeheartedly. He expresses that he does not want me to sacrifice for him, yet I willingly sacrifice for those I care about all the time. I derive immense joy from taking care of those I love and making them happy. If it means sacrificing my child-free dreams to make this man happy, I would do it, and I would find new sources of joy in parenthood. Yet he would not entertain the idea. He refused to be selfish and allow me to do that, so we ended our relationship. I believe it is a monumental mistake and I am unsure of what to do. At this point, I would feel far happier if he had cheated on me or something similar. At least that would provide a sense of closure, as if there was nothing I could have done to prevent it and a legitimate reason for our breakup. Because honestly, I cannot see any clear rationale for this situation. To summarize, my boyfriend broke up with me because I do not want children, while he does, despite our agreement to explore solutions that would work for both of us when the time came, options such as adoption, surrogacy, etc. I eventually said I would give him children, but he did not want me to sacrifice my desires for him. We remain broken up, and I feel that he is making a significant mistake. Thank you to everyone who reads this. Writing it was a major stress reliever. Story 5. My boyfriend's best friend Paula acts like I'm invisible. After my grandma passed, he took her to his sister's birthday while I stayed home. She often says things like, "You don't know what Richard did at the party." I can't shake the feeling she wants us to break up. How do I approach him without sounding accusatory? My boyfriend and I started dating approximately 3 months ago. He has been best friends with a girl for about a year. We are classmates at university and I have actually been friends with her since the beginning of our studies. Although we were not very close, we were among the closest in our friend group. We continued our friendship after the group dissolved, but during the 4th semester she ended up being his desk mate, and that is when their friendship began. As a result, I also became friends with him to the point where I fell in love as I got to know him better and realized we had much in common. He felt the same way, and thus we began our relationship. For context, this girl, whom we will call Paula, all names are fictitious, is the stereotypical extroverted person who has many friends in various circles. She likes to party, enjoys being the center of attention, and has a girlfriend 20 years old. She identifies as bisexual but has a preference for women. My boyfriend, Richard, is a unique type of extrovert who is somewhat shy and socially awkward. He has a small circle of friends but enjoys partying, drinking, and spending time with friends. He appreciates small gatherings and listening to others talk, but he also loves staying at home, playing video games, or watching anime. I am more of the stereotypical introverted type. I am socially awkward and do not enjoy parties as they overstimulate me. I am not good in large groups and much prefer staying at home doing things I enjoy. I have experience with relationships and friendships and often question my morals and values. Therefore, I would not describe myself as someone who needs to touch grass. I enjoy small gatherings and one-on-one conversations. I am socially awkward but still socially aware. I am also neurodivergent. So I've been friends with this girl, but he is the one who became her best friend, which is acceptable to me since I have never been a jealous person. I never questioned why he is friends with her instead of me in a self-pitying manner, but rather out of curiosity. My conclusion is that he simply clicked better with her as they probably have more in common. The issue arises in that when we began dating, I felt she started viewing me as her best friend's girlfriend rather than as her friend even though we had known each other longer. Here are some examples of situations that contributed to that feeling. A few weeks ago, my grandmother passed away, and the only person I informed was my boyfriend. On the same day, it was his sister's birthday. He wanted to invite me, but instead took Paula with him. This is another issue. I suspect he told Paula why I was not invited because recently we were talking when the semester resumed, and she already knew about it from the day it happened. I never received a message from her saying, "I'm sorry for your loss," or anything of that nature. Why would she mention that she already knew while I was sharing it with another friend in our group? What was the purpose of bringing it up if she could not even tell me then and there, "I'm sorry for your loss"? If that was not enough, here is another example. Sometimes the three of us are together, and I have no issue with that since I regard her as my friend. However, she often brings up comments like, "The other day I visited Richard and went out to eat for his sister's birthday and I met his mom." Or, "We went to a party the other day and Richard met my parents. We all went out to eat together after the party." I do not ask for these details, she simply states them to fill the silence. I did not find these comments odd until today. We went to his house, the three of us, because he received some clothes from Temu and wanted to try them on. There was no issue at his house, but on the way there we were holding hands and she tried to get in between us discreetly. She also attempted to talk to him, ignoring me. He made an effort to include me and I tried to participate in the conversation, but she would change the subject. That was the final straw, and I began questioning this girl's intentions. I fear she wants to harm our relationship because she occasionally says things like, "Oh, you do not know what Richard did at the party," in a mischievous tone. She makes similar comments daily, as if implying he has been unfaithful. In the end, when she tells me what he did, it is absolutely nothing to worry about, but it makes me feel not insecure, but strange because, based on my understanding of him, I do not expect such behavior. It does not align with his personality. If he did behave that way, the blame would be on him for risking our relationship over being unfaithful. I would still feel emotional, of course. What this makes me feel is that she does not want me around and wants me to break up with him. I have never encountered anyone behaving like this towards me. While I enjoy hearing gossip, I dislike being involved in drama, so I try to remain as passive as possible around others. The other issue involves the events surrounding his sister's birthday. Today they informed me of something I did not know. That particular day was when my grandmother passed away. We were preparing for things, and of course I was with my mother and siblings. When my boyfriend asked how I was that day, I shared this with him. I had known about his sister's birthday for several weeks, but he could not invite me because of that unfortunate event. Later that day, I asked him how his day was, and he told me that he went out to eat with his sister for her birthday along with his mother, and he invited Paula. I did not think much of it at the time, but today they shared something with me that I was unaware of, that his sister became upset with him for inviting her instead of me. He explained the situation to her, and she responded, "You should not invite your girl best friend instead of your girlfriend. If she could not come, do not invite anyone. I wanted her to come, not Paula." Initially, I interpreted this as his sister simply expressing a dislike for a stranger attending her birthday, but the more I reflect on it, the less that interpretation makes sense. After all, she has already met Paula and has seen me less than she has seen Paula, making me the stranger in this scenario. I place myself in the situation, and I would never invite my best friend to a family gathering for my sibling's birthday instead of my partner, even if my partner could not attend. I believe my partner should be the one I try to include in my family's plans and events, rather than my best friend of 1 year. I am uncertain if this is an unusual value to hold, so I would like some opinions on it. I also want to ask him how the situation developed this way. Perhaps she invited herself, in which case I understand that he did not want her to feel out of place. However, I am unsure about how all the events unfolded as they did. I want to discuss these two matters with him without making him feel attacked or becoming defensive, as it is natural to react that way when someone feels accused of something. Therefore, I am wondering how to approach this without being confrontational but still assertive. Should I initiate the conversation in a subtle manner, attempting to understand how things unfolded with a sympathetic discussion first, rather than going straight to the point? I apologize for any misspellings, as English is not my native language, and I have done my best to edit the text. Thank you. TLDR, my boyfriend's best friend behaves oddly when I am present, as if she wishes for us to break up or wants his attention solely to herself. I do not really feel jealous, but rather uneasy, and while I recognize he is doing his best in his first relationship, I still do not know how to manage certain situations. I want to discuss these concerns with him without triggering defensiveness, not because he has acted that way, but because it is a common response when someone feels accused. I want to avoid that dynamic in our conversation.